Love's embrace. Cambodian people have a special way of greeting each other. They cup their hands in a prayerful pose and bow their heads low. This is called Sampeya. I bow to your Buddha nature. When Cambodians greet persons of special importance, they offer a long and warm embrace. Then they gently lift the honored one into the air. This gesture places the honored one's head above the head of the greeter. It says, I have deep reverence for your being. When I met Catholic Pope John Paul II on the Vatican steps, we shared a warm embrace. Then, to show respect, I tried to lift him, but I am a small monk, and the Catholic Pope is of great stature. My arm was sore for weeks afterwards. Compassion must be met with wisdom. Some people say that Buddhism and Christianity cannot live together. I say, why not? Love can embrace everything. I bring love to the Catholic Pope. The Catholic Pope is happy. He embraces me and I embrace him. We are fearless together because of love. Big up Maha Ghosananda. Step by step. Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Mir, Ni hao, Buenos dias, Hirsache, Akwaba, Welcome. What up, though? We back at it. Hey. And the convo today is with Brother Hashim. So first off, if there's music playing on this joint, that means I was able to do it. Because at the moment, ain't got no phone. Thus, recording directly on Anchor is somewhat precarious. So I'm doing this in a different style than I've done the previous joints. So anyways, that's the end joint. This is a convo with Brother Hashim. Brother Hashim is a dear local brother who I know for going on a decade at this point. He is a cultural fixture of the Heights and the Cuyahoga area, doing many open mic joints at many different venues, sharing his musical talents with the community here in the Cuyahoga area, attending many festivals and events each year. So he and I have conversations throughout the years, like I say, with many people about life and the universe and religion and God and Buddha nature and all them things. So this conversation continues along those lines. And whilst I think about it, actually this conversation was just this past week. So this might be the most recent or the most expediently posted joints. And I'm posting it particularly because Vesak is approaching this week within the Buddhist tradition. And so it seems appropriate to share it accordingly. The topic is 3 steps towards Buddha nature. And whilst I think about it, there's a portion within the conversation where Brother Hashim makes an unprecedented move, and actually I appreciate this joint. He shares a quote. He reads a quote from his religious teachings, from his teachings from Buddhism, and so I very much appreciate that. It's a new element up to this point. So I like the idea of bringing in additional texts and teachings and bringing it into the combo. So that's cool. That being said, the actual text that he quotes, there was some challenge with that, and so I was focused on my 3 steps in sticking with that kind of theme, and so I abstained from getting back to the quote in a manner that I consider to be appropriate. So I am sharing a balancing proclamation accordingly. I have yet to talk with him either, so I try to be as direct as possible on these joints. But meanwhile, I'm continue with the schedule of posting it on Soleil Day. So I'm forthcoming in mentioning this to him directly. However, that being said, I say it now. In the text that he shares, in the quote that he shares, he says, it's a proclamation of his faith, and specifically referring to a mantra. The challenge is that in the proclamation, there's a certain negative rhetoric, and it basically says something to the effect of, unless such and such happens, then such and such will never happen. And so all topics, all proclamations are game and fair grounds for conversation. And like I said, I was focused on completing the 3 steps that I abstain from getting back to that quote. And so one that emphasizes to me to let go of the formulas in these joints, and at this point just being kind of increasingly extemporaneous and freestyle with the convo, rather than just focusing on some things I want to get said or what things I want to address or whatever. So that's one lesson. The other thing is that I will say this as a balancing thing. When it comes to people's path and spirituality, I share the proclamation that is shared with me, which is the divine presence exists within you. And you have the propensity for all things within this life. That being said, there are distinctions. There's cause and effect. There are consequences for what we do. There are consequences for what we don't do. And there is the essential and there is the non-essential. So the consideration is how we navigate within this life. I share further that our destination is heaven, our origination is heaven, and our path is our decision. Patience helps us make prudent decisions. Patience is cultivated through stillness, quiet, and honesty. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm not trying to step on too much of the convo, but like I said, particularly when we're talking about spirituality, and particularly amongst people who may be less assured and grounded within any particular spiritual path or conscientious or intentional with that. My protocol that I share within the convos that I have is to be as supportive as possible when it comes to spirituality. When it comes to other things, I can be very militant or whatever, but when it comes to spirituality, to abstain from limiting or subjugating anyone in an undue way. So anyways, all that being said, this is a beautiful conversation with Brother Hashim. Was very generous, and by the time we were like wrapping up the 3 steps, it was a long thing, and we share some insight about our histories, our relationships, our spiritual experiences, anecdotes, and additionally, Brother Hashim is well loved here in the Cuyahoga area. He has the pan drum, I want to call it, but it's a very distinctive sound, and you can hear it from blocks away, and it's a very mellow kind of vibe, and it bespeaks of his personality and his gift that he shares with the community, of years of conversations with people from all different walks of life, conversations with people who are not necessarily the most comfortable with talking with people, and so it's part of the gift and the charisma actually that he has, in being able to relate with people and making people feel comfortable, and sharing a message of upliftment, of positivity, as he does in this convo that's approaching, and is one of the reasons why I share him in this series. I invite him to participate in this series. Share him, that sounds so possessive and inappropriate, but to invite him to participate in this in these series of convos. And that being said, here's the joint.
We say that,
yeah,
for the most part.
Definitely.
But you know, we didn't come to be who we are just on our own accord, and somebody took the time to accentuate the positive in our life. You know, whether it was when you were a child or middle age or even, you know, a senior.
Yeah.
You know, I like to give an example of that. You know, like if you, I use an example analogy of you, as a kid picking up a piece of glass and somebody, I saw you pick up that piece of glass and accentuating the positive, and that's encouraging, man. You know, if we can take time to accentuate the positive. I think it was a song talking about accentuate the positive.
Right.
You know, don't be too much on the negative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between anyway. So I think in these particular times where you know, people have to, I think you have to greet life with life, even though, you know, we got COVID-19, got the virus, you know, playing no favorites, and people losing a lot of family, friends, and so on. We still have to, you know, not be so fearful in the sense of, I mean, be precautious, you know, as they put with you know, social distancing and the masks we should wear and this and that. I think we still have to realize that we're creatures of need, and that we're human beings, and that we you know, we should not be that fearful where we don't have some interaction with life. You know, life is all around us, and children, you know, they haven't forgot that. You know, they're one with the life force. You know, well, mommy feels so good outside because they're one with that. You know, they don't separate, they complicate. You know, as we become adults, we tend to, you know, we strategize or complicate things to the sense of, you know, overthinking a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I like to say, like one guru would say, simple living, high thinking, in a sense, where whatever gives you your greatest peace, man. And I like to seek after that. Now my mom, my mother's mother, is from the South. So she went to Spelman College.
Oh wow! Okay, cool.
Grew up in Birmingham, and my mother's father is from Trinidad.
Wow.
And I remember going visiting him in Detroit on my 19th birthday, and I was playing some reggae music, and he was listening to that music, man. He had a smile, and he said, "I know that music," you know? And it just kind of hit him, and you know, it just brought back a lot of memories there. You know? So I got my my art, or my drawing, my sculpturing. I can remember my dad taking a little piece of wood out of a shade you pull down and cover the window, making a little airplane. And I was watching him carve that when I was very, very young, man. I always wanted him, after he got finished with it, I was hoping he'd give it to me, but he didn't. But when he saw me drawing and stuff like that, he would be proud. Oh, he got that from me.
Nice.
So, you know, you know, we have a lot of gifts, man, that are bestowed upon us. And a lot of times we forsaken them, but you know, by doing somebody else's, you know, we got to do what we got to do to survive. But we do somebody else's, you know, how will I put this? somebody else's interest, you know.
Sure.
And I often ask myself, what have I done in my own best interest?
Okay.
And when I lost my job back in the 80s, it was the worst thing I thought that could ever happen to me. But as I look back on it, I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't have been able to go back into the educational system with the time that I had and perfect my gifts, you know, which was art, music, and sculpturing, and poetry, and what have you.
Beautiful.
So, you know, sometimes they say these are unprecedented times, of course, as they stated as such. But sometimes in the worst of situations, we should look for, you know, where's the opening in here? Where's the positive? What can I take from this situation that seems so awful and make it work for me? You know, like a mother's birth. You know, very, very painful, but then after it's all said and done and over with, something beautiful comes from it. So, so we have a situation. We have a saying that when there's so-called great evil, great good follows, or winter always turns to spring.
Yeah.
You know.
That's beautiful. So there's as you're speaking that they're like there's blossoms, brother. There's blossoms because I'm having memories and I'm having ideas, and so I'll share two things with you in response. You're supposed to be talking to this, but it's a convo, so I'm gonna throw in some stuff as well while we're at it.
Oh sure.
So you talk about you talk about the trials and like focusing on the positive, and towards the latter part you were talking about something towards the notion of upliftment, but it reminds me of two things. There are two things that remind me of, and then I want to go back to the original question about your heritage and bring it to connection. So one thing is, you reminded me of a conversation that I had with a young sister today. I went to the Euclid in Mayfield, as I do on a weekly basis. I didn't drum today, but I brought my drum. But for another reason, I didn't play it. But usually I play the drum just to like give some healing, give that heartbeat, and give some healing vibes. So I didn't have it today, so I didn't share it. But I was there. And as I was packing up and getting ready to go, there's a sister crossing the street to the block where I was standing, the corner where I was, and that was adjacent to where I was. And I was waiting for the light to turn on the other intersection. So she's walking slow, like she's like, I'm trying to think of what's going on here. So she was walking slow, and then as she got to the curb, she kind of just like paused there, but wasn't going in any particular direction. And so the light was about to change for where I was going, and then as it was about to change, she started to creep up to where I was, or walked slowly to where I was. And so she looked at me, she said hi, I said hi, and I asked her how she's doing, and she seemed like she was she was open for a conversation. So I asked her how she's doing. She said, well, and so she gave one of those responses, and then she was like, it was obviously that at first I was thinking she was gonna like say something about these days are tough for this, that, and the other, but she said that this particular day is hard. And so I've had conversations on the street before on Euclid Avenue, right where University Hospital is, and a lot of people are visiting people in the hospital or doing something that's challenging along those lines. And so I've had conversations with people saying like, I'm visiting a loved one and things are tough. So it seemed like she was having that type of experience, like that today is difficult. So I was like, oh, so what makes today difficult? And so she kind of pauses and is like thinking, do I share with my details, whatever? So she didn't say anything specific, but she was just like, life and this, that, and the other. But so then the thing I say to her is this. I tell people that in every day there are blessings and there are curses. And that a lot of people like to focus on just the blessings and like to have like the positive facade of like everything's cheery, blessings, everything's fine. But everybody's experiencing blessings and curses. And so that's how I tend to respond to people. And she kind of like read that. She kind of like nodded her head, and she seemed to like that seemed to resonate with her. And I went on further saying like, the the curses are actually classes for us to learn the lessons, to have the patience to understand, and then how to transform those curses into blessings, and then share the benefit with others accordingly. And so as I kept on talking like that, she was just like, she started to perk up a little bit and appreciate that. And so then I told her about patience, about stacking patience. Anybody can do it. It's the foundation of all blessings in this life. And it's 3 steps: being still, being quiet, and being honest. And at that point, she started like talk. She started to say, yeah, oh, that honest thing. Yeah, that's tough. And I was like, yeah, that's one of the toughest things. But when we do that, when we do those 3 things, when we're still, when we're quiet, and when we're honest, the answers start to arrive. And by that point, she was already like smiling, and like I could see, like I saw brightness in her face. And she's like, this is exactly what I needed today. And so I was just like, oh, I appreciate being able to share that, because I get energy when I share that, and when it's particularly when it's receptive, when it vibes with people, when it resonates. And so I could feel that she was feeling it, and I appreciate that. And so she continued. She actually looked like she was like about to cross. We were crossing the street at that point, and then she was crossing the street back. So she might have just been crossing streets. I don't know. But we went on our different walks. But that was one of the conversations, and you were speaking something to that effect about the positive and transforming the challenges that we experience into the lessons, and getting the positive and sharing that accordingly. And then just a few minutes ago, sitting out here where I live, on Mayfield, there was a brother that stopped by. He had dreads, and we started talking about Jamaica, and we were talking about the music, and your dad in Trinidad and Tobago, and we were talking about Junior Blessington, who you know. He was like, oh, Junior Blessington. So yeah, when you talk about the culture and the vibe and everything, Irie, that's one of those beautiful things that's shared. And I've had a number of conversations about Junior Blessings with brothers around here who know who he is. So it's kind of cool. But so going back to your family, that's beautiful that you have that heritage of like the lineage of the arts and the culture that your father provides through his craftsmanship, and your grandmother, your mother's mother, graduated from Spelman. That's impressive, particularly back in the day, because that's a very distinguishing credential to achieve. So that obviously education and learning are significant teachings and principles within your family. So that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, she was a seamstress. She worked at the Fisher Body plant, and I think my mother wanted to follow that path in sewing. That she got married, and sometimes your path goes a different direction.
Sure.
And after having kids, so she never could follow. She kind of gave sacrifice.
Sure.
And raised. Spend more time raising her children,
Yeah, but
off of her mother,
But the thing is, we might perceive it as a sacrifice, but it's just a different way of manifesting the teachings that we receive. Mm-hmm. Because obviously, I mean, you are a conscientious brother, and that comes from the influence that your mother has with you, and that your father has with you as well. And that bespeaks, and education isn't just a matter of like attaining degrees; it's a matter of one's mindfulness.
And then while you're on this path, this journey that we're on, the people that we meet along the way, that they all have. Everybody's born with some gifts, man. I don't want to, state that, but but the thing is to tune in on them, where you get a chance to say, well, hey, what am I good at? What would I like to do if money wasn't an obstacle?
Sure.
What would I be doing with my life?
Yeah.
Or getting close to, asking questions like, what's my purpose? I'll never forget. I watched this movie. It's the whole Turner classic kind of thing. It was called The Razor's Edge. And this particular guy this was back in the maybe let's say maybe 40s or 50s, that time era. Okay. And this young guy gets out of the army or the service that he was in, and he was really disturbed because a stranger took a bullet for him and didn't even know him. and he's coming back home to I guess he's somewhat engaged with this beautiful young lady that she's in the high society of Islam kind of lifestyle, and he just he couldn't go through with it, right then and there, because he wanted to go and search his life out a little bit more to find out why was somebody that he didn't even know, lay their life down for his. And it really bothered him, man. He went, I think his travels took him, he worked on a ship, but I don't want to tell you the whole story about the movie, but I think he went to the Himalayas up in India. He went to, he went to find it out, man. He wanted to find out, who would do something like that?
Interesting.
Outside of, Jesus Christ kind of thing, or avatars, or guru, or somebody, but then we all have that propensity, to when you put others before you, and live your life for others. Like, for instance, Bob Marley did that, man.
Yeah.
Bob Marley, he never separated himself from the people. He didn't lock his car up when he was in Jamaica. Yeah. He kept people. A lot of people were living off the money that he gave to them.
Yep.
And that's a nice little sum that was, finding a livelihood off of that. And now, in these particular times, man, it's calling people to get in contact with the part that makes us truly human. And whether it's money or just being able to smile sincerely or say hello sincerely.
Yeah.
Goes a long way, man.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about that altruism, that love of others, and living for something beyond just oneself, living for a purpose beyond oneself. And so there are a number of words and terms and teachings that the Buddha applies to describe that phenomena, one of which is metta, which is loving kindness. And so perhaps that might be a nice segue into the topic of the 3 steps towards Buddha nature. And by that, I'm basically just saying, like, things that have been spiritual awakenings, like certain episodes in our lives where we just were like, yo, I need to be doing this, or this is my path in life. And so, are you ready to get into that topic?
Yeah, well, I think, as you met me on the streets and busting on the streets and out there with the people, playing my music or sharing the little talent that I think I'm able to share, whether it's playing guitar or the tom drum or flute or just having a good conversation on whatever topic. That's what it boils down to, man. You know that when you leave out your front door, how are you going to greet those situations that whether good or bad, and how are you going to respond to them? Okay. Because a lot is resting on how we as individuals choose to perceptualize what we call reality. To how we are viewing our lives in conjunction with the bigger picture. And that's
exactly how the Dhammapada opens up about the things that we experience in the life are the result of our thoughts, and how our mental disposition shapes our experiences and our circumstances within this life. And if we focus on hatred and the things that are done to us, and anger and hostility and responding to that, then that's what we experience. But when we let go of that and focus on understanding, not necessarily accepting, but understanding, then we change the path in our life. We change the conditions, the circumstances. So I'll ask you this: when was the okay, cool, my fault. When was the first time? When's the first time like you heard about or even like made like did you grow up Buddhist? How about that? What was the first time you learned about the Buddha or heard about the Buddha?
Buddhism came into my life around 2008.
Okay.
But I've always been a student of studying religions.
Yeah.
Prior to Buddhism, I was fellowshipping with devotees or Hare Krishna.
Sure. Okay.
And then prior to Hare Krishna, I was in the embracing Islam.
Well,
and then before that,
wait. Would you say that again? I missed that term.
I said prior to Hare Krishna, I embraced Islam.
Ah, okay, cool. Islam. All right.
For some time during the latter 70s.
Okay.
And then before that, I was brought up in a Christian church.
Aha.
But I would visit, different churches and mosques or whatever. I'd go wherever the Spirit would tell me, man.
Yeah.
We had a Catholic church right around the corner, and I remember Father Wilson and Brother Richard having some, very fun conversation with him. My whole thing. I hate to get in an argument where you have to, you have to be under this particular religion. Or,
imposition.
Kind of thing, in the sense where, I'm more of a free spirit, man.
I hear you. I mean, like I said, we're the same ilk.
Makes differences, and all we got to do is be respectful of it.
Yeah. So
the tree ain't trying to be no more than what it is. It didn't even name itself a tree, but it's not being no more than what it is. So
yeah.
The bottom line is how we treat one another.
Yeah.
How sincere we're going to be, and our deeds.
Very much so.
What's that movie? The Immortals, where Theseus.
Okay.
Where he's fighting this evil character, man. He said that I think it might be a fight to the death where he loses his life. He said, my deeds will follow me. Who would speak of me? My deeds will speak for me. My actions, the way I went forth with my life, and how I, how I use my life, for the benefit. Because he thought you ever see that movie?
Nah, I didn't. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, man. Pretty good, man.
Well, I don't appreciate like the mortality of that, but or at least I should say the violence of that. Because we're trying to get off path there a little No. That's fine. That's all. It's all part of the mix. So, but I do appreciate the notion of like recognition of something beyond oneself, and I think that's we can look at Islam and the battles that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah. So, but like for example, but even like the battles that the tribes of Israel face after leaving Mitzrayim, and additionally, in each of these things, there's a very very fundamental lesson of life to be learned that goes to exactly what you're saying. When you talk about the brother being killed, I'm presuming he was the benevolent one who's talking about at least my deeds will live beyond my life. That's somebody who has an awareness of something greater than himself and living for something greater than himself. And even in that awareness, in that consciousness, life fits in that context. Like there's something greater than life. Now it's not a matter of having a martyrdom complex necessarily, or having a death wish, but it's just recognizing like being less comparatively indifferent to life because there's a knowledge of that something greater, something beyond life. Whereas the person who's malevolent just focuses on life, and without life, all those pleasures or power or anything else doesn't mean anything. So it's all about staying alive and being in power. But as powerful as such an individual might be, they're limited. And there's a weakness in that. And yes, they may bulk up for a moment, but It's weak and it's limited and it's final. There's a finality to it and there's a futility to it. And so when we look at the battles that are faced, when you look at the numbers, like when the Ummah is facing the numbers against them from the established tribes of Arabia, the established nations and kingdoms and cities of the Arabian Peninsula, like the numbers are stacked against them and like the horses and everything else. But the thing is, there's a strength in the people who have that spirit, who have a knowledge about something greater than life, who are invigorated and energized by that and guided by that, compared to the people who are the conscripts, like the people who are the mercenaries that are paid to do it and are just doing a job and are looking at the finite, and it's either life or nothing. There's a weakness that comes with that, and so that's like.
I want to interject on ask you something.
Okay.
So when you use the term something greater than life, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Okay. So, for example, in that example that you provided about the brother who is facing his death and saying his deeds will live beyond that, right there, that's an example. His deeds are going to go beyond his actual life. So he in living his life, he's living in accordance to principles that he recognizes are eternal, in one way or another, are eternal. And so he's saying that he's contributing to that legacy, to that discipline, and he's identifying with that experience. And so his life might be finite. However, the way he lives his life goes on through that example, through other people honoring that, through other people adhering to that, through other people being inspired by that, and additionally.
Sure.
And so he finds peace with that. So it's a peace that exists beyond his life. So I
want to just share something under the teachings of Nichiren Daishonin, which was a 17th century Japanese priest that brought that interpretation of Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay. And I just want to read something out of this is called The Basis of Buddhism.
Okay.
By Pat Allwright, little paperback book. It says, if you wish to free yourself from the suffering of birth and death you have endured through eternity and attain supreme enlightenment in this lifetime, you must awaken to the mystic truth which has always been within your own life. This truth is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo will therefore enable you to grasp the mystic truth within you. Myoho Renge Kyo is the king of the sutras, flawless in both letters and principle. Its words are the reality of life, and the reality of life is the mystic law Myoho. It is called the mystic law because it explains mutually exclusive relationships of life and all phenomena. That is why this sutra is the wisdom of all Buddhas. Life at each moment encompasses both body and spirit, and both self and environment of all sentient beings in every condition of life, as well as insentient beings, plants, sky, and earth, on down to the most minimal particles of dust. Life at each moment permeates the universe and is revealed in all phenomena. One awakens to this truth himself, embodies this relationship. However, even though you chant and believe in the Myoho Renge Kyo, if you think the law is outside of yourself, you are embracing not the mystic law, but some inferior teaching. Inferior teachings mean those other than this sutra, which are all provisional and transient. No provisional teaching leads directly to enlightenment. And without the direct path to enlightenment, you cannot attain Buddhahood. Even if you practice lifetime after lifetime for countless eons, attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime is then impossible. Therefore, when you chant the mystic law and recite the Lotus Sutra, you must summon up deep convictions that Myoho Renge Kyo is your life itself. You must never seek any of Shakyamuni's teachings or Buddha or Bodhisattvas of the universe outside of yourself. Your mastery of the Buddhist teaching will not relieve you of mortal suffering in the least unless you perceive the nature of your own life. If you seek enlightenment outside of yourself, any discipline or good deed will be meaningless. Thanks for letting me been there. I'm sharing that from that's the basic of Buddhism by Pat Albright.
Okay.
Keys and principle how to practice.
Okay.
I just wanted to interject and get that, share that with you there.
Okay, that's cool. And is there a particular reason that you share that in regards to what I was saying, or was that something that you just wanted to communicate as it is?
Well, I mean, if you those are not throwaway words, and just to ponder that, if you wish to free yourself from the suffering of birth and death you have endured throughout eternity and attain supreme enlightenment in this lifetime, think about that, man. That's something, now, because in life, each and every one of us, going to go through suffering. We're going to need birth and death. We're going to have those ups and downs, and so what do I need to know that's going to get me through all of that and come out triumphantly?
Okay.
So to not feel defeated by any of that, those challenges that we all are going to face towards the end of our lives.
I hear you. So one follow-up question specifically for that is, I hear that phrase before. I'm familiar with the phrase, but I appreciate if you would, like, particularly for those who aren't familiar with Nam-myo Renge Kyo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. How would you directly define that phrase?
Well, I think it's defined as I am embracing the universal law of life.
Okay.
It's all phenomena. That's everything.
Okay.
And all phenomena is inside of that's inside our life force.
Okay.
Our life condition.
So
that we I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I interrupted you, so that was rude of me.
That when we call forth and recite that mantra, you call those forces into place to help you accomplish the so-called impossible.
Sure.
And I've been chanting it since 2008, November the 2nd. That's when I first got my Gohanza. Scroll that Nichiren inscribed Nam-myoho Renge Kyo.
Okay.
We have like a copy. Each member has a copy of that particular scroll of the Lotus Scripture, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, that Nichiren did.
Cool.
And he was persecuted. If you look at this life, man, just like Christ or any other avatar, anybody that want to do great good or help other people, they always end up being persecuted by opposition, by like yourself, or by people that are challenging them, saying,
Who are you talking about specifically?
Why are you helping others?
Who is that?
Hello?
Yeah, who was that? Who said it was persecuted? Which teacher is that?
I mean, from Jesus, from Buddha, from Muhammad. All the great teachers from Ramakrishna, J. Krishnamurti, Paramahansa, probably Yogananda, was all the great avatars, man, the spiritual leaders, even then and now, if you say that if you are living the truth, which is very, very simplistic to live the truth. I think that, just like I remember my grandmother would say, I treat people the way I want to be treated, or want for your brother as you want for yourself. Just try to live that out. Try to live out the word you profess to be about.
Sure.
So if each and every person could live out a basic truth, like what this virus or COVID-19 is causing people to get in touch with their humanity, man. That part that makes us all, we all want a non-patronizing attitude or
sure.
Or,
humble.
Yeah, when if I say, hey Peter, how you doing? It don't mean it ain't gonna do Peter no good. It ain't gonna do me no good. You know?
Yeah.
So we don't want nobody. We want people to be honest. Like you spoke a lot about honesty, man. That's one of those qualities that we want to represent. If we want to, represent good or represent truth or represent the best of ourselves, what's best in us, we can do that, man. It's a battle because there are negative forces exteriorly and interiorly inside our life, outside of our life that at play. As soon as you make a step towards man's higher consciousness, or trying to get closer to that part where you're understanding your life and trying to do good for yourself and others, you're gonna have challenge. You're gonna meet some obstacles, and just depending upon how strong and how stable and how you view those obstacles, that you can get around them or use them to your advantage. As far as building yourself up, building your faith, or not take it so personally where you feel defeated by it, or this says, oh man, you overcome by certain situations and circumstances that are coming into your life at that particular time.
Yeah. So I recognize that the mantra is a very critical component of your. I don't know if I say spiritual path, is that an okay term, or should I say
spiritual practice? Yeah.
Spiritual practice, okay. So the mantra.
I try to implement it. You're supposed to do it in the morning and at night.
Okay.
Mostly I try to implement it in the morning, and sometime at night from time to time if I ain't too fatigued.
Yeah, I hear you. So and you also mentioned the specific date when you go through the rite of passage in that practice. So that I recognize that as a salient event of a step that you take towards Buddha nature, and I wonder whether we might be able to backtrack, because that seems like a seminal type of step, and so what I'd be interested in doing is kind of backtracking a little bit in your history and retracing some of those steps that you've taken towards that process. When you talk about being involved with the ISKCON, the Hare Krishna community, and then the Islamic community, and then also coming up from a Christian background, the sequence that leads you to making that proclamation of the mantra and going through that rite of passage. And actually, if I might be a little bit immodest, or however that the phrase would be, what I would like to do is actually share it with you an episode that happens in my life, and how that shapes my spiritual path, including towards Buddha nature. But actually, it's something that happened in a non-denominational Christian church. So, if I can give you the scene of that, if that's okay with you.
Sure, Peter.
All right. So basically, this was my freshman year at university. I was at Hampton University. And up to that point, I graduated from Heights. I was out of shape. I mean, not just out of shape. I was mildly obese, over like 300 pounds. Awkward, geeky, didn't fit in, and it was very difficult to live through high school. And one of the things that was a light at the end of the tunnel was going to university, because people say, oh, everything's going to be nice at college. Oh, it's a dream. Oh, this and the other. So I spent 4 years of high school facing difficulty, looking forward to university. So when I got to university, there were some challenges or whatever, making adjustments, but it was pretty nice. But still, I was still insecure, this and the other, overweight, awkward. And I had made a few friends that were nice to me and that were cool, whatever. But so long story short, at some point in my freshman year, my first semester, one of my closest friends, all of a sudden one night, as I'm sitting in my dorm room with my roommates with me, that one friend just comes in through the door, opens the door, and he had his friend with him, and he walks up to me and smacks me in the face. I was like, what? What was that? I mean, my dad always taught us to like protect ourselves. If anybody hit us, hit them back, and this and the other. So that's the mentality I have. But to be honest, I was like, yo, did he hit me? He smacked me. I'd never been smacked in my life. I'd been in fights before when people did. I never started a fight, but when people have hit me, I've defended myself and got back. But I was literally sitting on my bed, like, yo, what do? I don't have a green light to hit. I don't know. What was it? Was that a hit? Was that like a push? Because if it was a push thing, I don't have a green light. But it was a hit, I do. I didn't know. And as I was sitting there trying to figure out, yo, he smacked me again. I was like, oh man. But so anyways, long story short, for that, I didn't fight back because I didn't have the green light. I couldn't fight back. And so that's how it ended. Now after that, they were just like, and they kind of walked out. Now at that point, yo, man, I was devastated because like, he was one of my closest friends, and like I was feeling better at university, but I was still awkward. And at that point, it was just like the bottom fell out. So I left my room, I left my dorm room, and I just started walking the campus. I started like walking like, yo, and I was like, I had grown outside of any religion. I was never a member of a church or any religious community. I believe in God and I believe in the golden rule, and that's pretty much what guided me up to that point. And the only thing that was on the campus was a chapel. It was non-denominational, and the door was always open. So I knew that, and I was just kind of like wandering around the campus, and then I just saw the chapel. The light was on. It was empty. It was like a welcome place. It was like a sanctuary, a quiet place, and I was like, yo, I'll try to pray. So, because I was like, yo, high school was hellish for me, and now am I going to go through the same thing, even worse, at university? I thought this was supposed to be the dream, and here it is. This cat who was my friend smacked me on my face. I was having like an existential crisis at that point because I was like, yo, man, what is life about? If I thought I was done with the games and the stupidness or whatever, so I was like, yo, I might as well just go into this sanctuary and like pray. So that's what I do. So I went into one of the pews and I kind of just like said, God, am I on the right path? Is this whatever? And so when I was sitting there, all of a sudden I just felt like peace. And that was kind of like the first spiritual experience that I have that was intentional, and it wasn't even necessarily religious, but it was just a matter of like communicating with something, with God, and with something beyond just this temporal life. And so that's one of the steps that I consider taking towards the Buddha nature is having that kind of awakening and that consciousness, and even that responsiveness of like, because after I do that, I felt that peace. I was like, yo, okay, I just felt like things are going to be okay, and things do get better. With that assuredness and that sense of peace, I kind of just keep doing what I do and don't worry about like getting caught up in a game or revenge or whatever else. And it ends up happening actually that after a year, like he and I don't talk after a while, and the next year we both go out for the same fraternity, and so we had to kind of like settle our differences. And then we actually he apologized. He said like he was tripping and he was wrong, and so we became actually best of friends, continuing on through the rest of university. And so it's kind of like that tapping into a consciousness that provides us balance and encouragement to just be steady and to proceed in a rightful way regardless of what happens to us. And it's not a matter of necessarily just taking abuse or whatever and accepting it, but it's a matter of like how we mindfully proceed after experiencing the abuse in a compassionate and righteous manner. So that's one of the steps that I experienced in that walk.
And you said he was a friend of yours to begin with.
He was one of my closest friends that first semester, a freshman year, and you know how it's there's that awkwardness of everybody trying to like find out where they fit in and everything, and so he was one of the cats that I would go to his room. We would play Madden on the Sega Genesis, and he was one of the few cats that like I would have like an extended conversation with, and so. Like I said, he was one of the closest dudes. So the fact now, like I said, there was a long story. So there's a little bit of a reason of what precipitated it, but it was like way wrong. And so it was just like very devastating to like one of the people who was closest would just come up and not even like not give a warning, just out the blue, a smack to the face and no words.
Right.
So
down the road, he said he was a little what now?
He said he was wrong. I mean, like I said, we were going out for the same fraternity, and we both.
Apologize.
Yeah, we both made it to we both made it into the fraternity. But even before we both make it into the fraternity, like we knew that we would have to like be reconciled with each other because we were both like going for the fraternity. So and we were part of the same kind of group. So they were like, "Yo, you gotta make amends." So. We kind of like hung out for a while, and then we had like a talk, man-to-man talk of like, yo, that that was tripped out, and he was like, yeah, and he apologized for that. He said he was wrong, and so it was squashed. I mean, and I don't even like don't hold it over him or anything, but it did change me. It did have an influence in my life, and it made me question things. And I found some answers along that way, and I think that's kind of like when the Buddha is traveling beyond the confines of his palace, and he sees that suffering, he begins to like awaken about what things are in life, and searching for the answers accordingly. So and finding out about dukkha and the nature of suffering. So that's one of the things that one of the episodes in my life that precipitate that.
Thanks
So
for sharing that.
yeah,
Man, that's pretty intense, man.
Yeah.
And for you not to respond, man, that's your Buddha nature was.
Well, I'd like to think that, but yeah, to be honest, it was actually like a very legalistic kind of detail, kind of. If you can imagine like some dude in like thick glasses looking at a textbook and looking at the fine line of a law of like, does this warrant this kind of response or whatever else? I was literally like paused, trying to think. Wait a minute, was that a hit? Does that classify as hit? Because I've been in situations, and actually after that situation, when somebody actually punched me in the face, and I fought back and I punched him back. So I was trying to think to myself, wait, does a slap count as a hit or does it not count as a hit? Because if it was somebody who just shoved me, I don't have a green light to hit them or get enveloped in that. It's just because people just shove to kind of like make a name for themselves or whatever else. So I didn't have a green light for a shove. So that was the clear thing. And if I got punched, then I have the green light to respond accordingly. At least at that time when I was at Latin. Today is a little bit different protocol. But literally, I was sitting on the bed, and my roommate was right there on his bed, and I was literally just paused, like, wait a minute, do I have a green light? Do I not have a green light? And I was frustrated because I was like, I know what's going to happen. I know what people are going to say if I don't respond. But do I have a green light? Is my family going to back me if I fight back? Is the school going to back me if I fight back? Do I have a green light? And I didn't have a green light because I couldn't classify a slap as a hit because I'd never been slapped before. I mean, I don't even think I've been slapped ever since then. But anyways, that was. I mean, the point is just like it was the devastation afterwards, and the awakening that comes from that devastation. So that's what I appreciate. But I want to go back to what you were talking about in terms of like your childhood when we're talking about raising up in the church. What's one of the first memories that you have about going to church and some of the experience, some of the things that you appreciate when you were going to church?
Well, I was drawn to the stories in the Bible, man. I love those stories, about the life of Jesus at a young age, or the prophets,
Yeah.
Jeremiah, and all those biblical stories.
Sure.
I think it's really kind of melt in my heart there. It's almost like
Yeah.
I could imagine myself living in that time period.
Yeah.
And even though I'm here living in this particular time period, but I kind of imagine myself living back then, man, and I'm just very attracted to that these men were trying to live a holy life, trying to make their world better, in the midst of opposition and
sure,
and hunger, starvation, and it's a whole different lifestyle. Where you had the politics of that time.
Yeah.
Rome was a power.
Yeah.
And then you had the common people. You had the taxes, just those stories and those fables and how they would touch my heart and affect my consciousness.
Well, there's an
I think because after church or before church, we had Sunday school.
Sure. Yeah.
And that was that was where a lot of the stories that I learned, biblical stories back then, they kind of like they were built character, just like even with the stories of the Prophet Muhammad.
Sure.
And his companions, they call Sahabas, and how they when Muhammad had to flee Mecca, and I think he went to Jerusalem. He went to an African priest, and for safety.
Right. So he actually
and the Quraysh mob, some kind of Quraysh mob back then was looking for Muhammad to kill him, really.
Yeah.
And,
so, well, actually, what happens is that he is raised in Mecca, and that's where he receives the initial persecution, and so he sends some of the members of the community to it starts with a C. It's a Christian community in Eastern Africa. Man, the name escapes me at the moment. It's right there, but oh no, it starts with the C. It starts with the C because it's Christian, but it's Abyssinia. He sends members of the community to Abyssinia to get refuge from the persecution that's in Mecca. But he still stays in Mecca. But then after that, there's continuing persecution, and he's cast into the desert for a number of years, and that's when his wife Khadija, peace and blessings be upon her, passes away, and then he receives an invitation from Medina, the leadership of Medina, for him to have refuge and be a leader within Medina. And so that's what he does, and that's where the pilgrimage to Medina. It's later that he has like the mystical journey to Yerushalayim. I think it's called to be honest, I'm reaching on my knowledge at that point, but that's where he has it. So yeah, but there's some fantastic stories, and there is a timelessness that's experienced within these stories, whether it's from the Quran, whether it's from the Gospels, and whether it's from the Torah and the Tanakh. There's a timelessness that exists within the experience of the prophets, the ancestors, and the sages, whose experiences are narrated in those and revealed and shared through those words. Because it's timeless experiences of truth and falsehood, greed, hatred, delusion, honesty, peace, love, perseverance, and overcoming the challenges that we experience. So those are things that resonate every generation, regardless of the technology, regardless of the civilization, and additionally. So
right, exactly.
And you experienced that. You experienced those as
you can apply some of how they handle those situations like that. You can apply it to everyday life.
Exactly.
A lot of times, and how we are living, in the current times,
And you were a young star, a young boy when you got that initial introduction.
Yeah,
Is there a student?
I'll never forget. I got a certificate out of Sunday school, man. I think I got a picture. I took it in my sisters or brother. They took a picture of me in the driveway coming from Sunday school with my certificate, man.
Okay.
But all that, how we were raised back then, man. It's like if you didn't go to church or Sunday school, you weren't going to no movies. You weren't going to do too much of nothing else. You didn't get some of the gospel.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a particular Sunday school teacher that stands out in your memory?
Well, yeah, there was an older lady. I forget what was her name. Matter of fact, her grandson lives down Miss Watt.
Okay.
And her grandson lives down the street, Michael Boyd now, and she taught Sunday school. And I think a gentleman by the name of Mr. Smith took us on. We went on. Where did we go? We went to Sandusky to the Blue Hole, which is closed, but it's this bottomless pit in Sandusky where I think they could find where this water, like a small little pond or whatever. They couldn't find the bottom of it.
Yeah.
But they said a lot of people said it kind of led out to the Sandusky Bay. But yeah, we went there in Sunday school. Mr. Smith took us out. That was an enjoyable outing.
And that's a beautiful thing when you connect the teachings and the stories, the narratives of prophets, ancestors, and sages with community, like people studying, the children around you, the fellow students who are studying, and the teachers and the church community that's knowledgeable and in learning the same stories. That's beautiful. And then when you further connect that and build relationship with nature, and commune with the earth and with the elements, with the plants, with the animal life, and additionally, that brings all those elements together, like those fundamental experiences of life, the timelessness through the scriptures, the fellowship with the people, and then connection with the plants and the animal life as well. It helps to provide an increasingly holistic perspective and consciousness about our relationship and our walk within this life as well.
Very, very much so, Peter.
So how about let's get into the next. I don't know if it was necessarily the next stage, but the next one that you described, which was your involvement with the Islamic community. What was like? What's the first occasion that you meet a Muslim, or that you learn about Islamic teachings that builds like sparks an interest to learn further?
Well, I looking at the hospital. There was a good friend that a gentleman that was Muslim that met him there, and he was telling me about Islam, and I was curious about it, and I went to the mosque, and saw how Muslims share their food together and pray together and read Quran together, and they had. There was a book called The Teaching of Islam, a short book about the companions of the Prophet Muhammad.
Sure.
They call it Sahabas.
Yeah.
You read stories, and they kind of like strengthen your faith and your beliefs in Islam. And then I took the Kalima Shahada, and I was I was a practicing Muslim for a number of years. You know.
Which masjid? Which masjid was it?
Pardon me?
Which mosque was it?
It was mosque over on Superior, Marcy Noor, on 99th and Superior.
Okay.
A small house.
Okay.
I used to ride my bike over there, and I've been on not a whole lot of Jamaats, but I've been on Jamaats, and then there would be Jamaats coming into the mosque, and brothers coming back, and you know, they say that it's a wonderful thing when you go out. They call it feasibilillah, to go out into the path of Allah, to do this work, you know, to spreading Islam, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, it was very fortifying, you know. This out of your 24 hours a day to take some time to pray and thank God, and you know, to reckon with a force that is keeping everything together here.
Yeah.
Even your own life, you know.
I'll share this.
Yeah, that has some interesting times and you know, in Islam, and I still, you know, I love Islam. I love what brought me to the point that where I'm at today.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of good times with the Hare Krishnas and even in the Baptist church. You know.
Yeah. I want to ask you about that too. But before I do that, I just want to say one thing. When you talk about the praying, and I'll share this of myself in response to what you described. So I make Shahada over 7 years ago as part of my spiritual path, and so I'm saying from being officially involved with a mosque specifically, but I gradually become increasingly observant to the point where within the past year I begin, for a while, for a number of years, I would do the make Fajr prayer, offer Fajr prayer, but within the past year, with some conversations and some consultation, I begin to actually perform Salat on the 5 occasions each day, and the thing I find with that is that it's first of all, whenever I do prayer in any way, whether it's davening according to Israeli rite or according to Christian rite, or when I do practice samadhi or even do yoga, it's such a beautiful thing. It's replenishing. It's refilling. It's refreshing. It's just so awesome in so many ways. And so when I would do Fajr prayer, I would experience that. But what I experienced increasingly in doing it 5 times a day, for the most part, I do my best, but I'm pretty decent with it. Thank God, alhamdulillah, and in business Hashim and all that. But anyways, one of the things I found is that there is in that structure, there's like a sense of company. There's a sense of like fellowship or connection, or I'll say relationship. There's the relationship with.
They call that Ikhwani Muslimin.
Okay.
One for your brother as you want for yourself.
All right. So it's a beautiful thing. Even when I'm praying by myself, I just feel there's in relationship, and that's when in any prayer and meditation. But that's one of the things to do that with a certain structure throughout the day. It helps to put things in perspective about what's significant, what's priority. As I'm looking at Maghrib approaching. So anyways, I just want to put that aside again to step on toes a little bit and just say something about myself. But I want to ask you about the Hare Krishna. Is that here in the Cuyahoga area?
Well, the person that I'm much familiar with, Mother Krishna Nandini, used to have.
Yes.
You know Tariq and
I do.
Nandini, don't you?
I do. How do you know that?
Well, they're good friends of mine.
Okay, cool. So, and I was going to ask you, because I was going to say, if you've been involved with the Hare Krishna movement here in the Cuyahoga area, you probably most likely know Krishna Nandini, because she's like just like you said. Yeah.
They're very, very, very good friends of mine.
Yeah. You know, they live in down south now.
Huh?
They're down south now.
Yeah. I think they're in North Carolina.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yep. So yeah, so
Yeah.
beautiful people. I know for many years. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
They told me they knew you, Peter.
Okay. Yeah.
You
So,
know.
but I think that this is the first time we talk about it, though. That's like, so
Yeah, man.
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah. But all right. So how did you get involved with the Hare Krishna movement?
At the Hare Krishna, I think I was I met them over at the you know, I don't know if you know or not, but the Hare Krishna devotees used to meet over at the art museum, behind the art museum.
Ah, okay.
Where the duck pond had, you know, and they used to have you know, they used to have kirtan and Bhagavad Gita class right there, and the chanting of the holy names and the kirtan and they would have a vegetarian feast afterwards.
Okay.
You know, everybody would come by and eat. I think I stopped. I was with a friend. I stopped, and that's how I first got introduced. You know, from that standpoint. But I remember the Hare Krishnas being downtown, man. You know, orange saffron and chanting. You at the airport, and you know, and I think I have one of my early magazines, Back to Godhead, that I bought back in the 70s, man. And I put it down. I said, well, this book is too much the way I think, you know. I thought, you know, inwardly, it's okay to have, you know, but it's like, wow, man, you know. I had to put it down for a while, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
It can be overwhelming.
But the Bhagavad Gita, man, is, I'm telling you, man, you talk about the past times.
Hey, and the eternal, yeah.
You know, all those stories are leading, is showing us, you know, those allegories and metaphors, you know, because it's showing us how to, you know, how to equip your life in dealing with your fellow man.
Yeah.
And how to, you know, how to say, do your duty.
Yeah.
The battle of Kurukshetra, where Arjuna he's got to kill his relatives, and he's lamenting because these people raised me, man. What do you mean, Krishna? He said, neither Krishna says to Arjuna, neither time when the soul is born nor die, just do your duty.
Yeah, I remember when I first read that English. Exactly, I remember when I first read that passage in the second chapter after Arjuna gives his plea about despair. Sri Krishna's response is like, "You speak words of wisdom, but they're words that are futile because." All the kings gather here. There's never been a time when you and I and all these kings have never existed. There will never be a time where we will never exist. Like and just like right there, speaks right straight to the soul, like straight to the eternal, the divine presence, the divine being within each of us. And like you say, like when someone has that type of communication, it's like almost paralyzing because it's just. It can be overwhelming. There's a scene in The Message, which is a film about Islam and how it begins. There's a scene at the beginning of the film where the people are bringing their idols to the Kaaba, and there's one of the people is being like carried on like a it looks like a stretcher, but he's like sitting on like two sticks that have a carpet in between them, and he's like sitting on that, so he's being carried. He's a priest, and he has the idol that he's carrying, and he's heading it over to the steward of the Kaaba, and like he pauses, and they obviously don't show the depiction of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But they let it be known that it's him who's looking at the priest, and the priest kind of says, "Who is this man who looked into my soul?" Or something to that effect. But it's just that kind of like that deep understanding and the thing that's just like penetrating beyond all the like the facades and all the pretenses and all the BS and everything else like that. Like, yo, this is what it is. So that's an awesome thing. But
indeed.
one of the things about the Hare Krishna scene is that I think if a lot of people look at, particularly when we talk about the saffron robes and everything, a lot of people look at it as just a peculiarity. It's like it's a very distinct kind of visual, and when people are just used to seeing a certain type of thing, they look at that other person or the other community like, oh, those are different or whatever, or this, that, and the other. And so it actually reminds me of my neighbor growing up on Washington Boulevard here in the Heights. Growing up on Washington Boulevard, I actually grew up across the street from a conservative synagogue, which I actually become a member of a number of years later. But when I was about 7 years old, we had new neighbors. And the new neighbors, like our family, was mixed. They were a mixed family. The husband was of European ancestry. The wife is of African ancestry, and they had a young son who was a few years older than myself. And so, for me, when we're children, we think everything's normal. We don't think nothing of it or whatever. However, simultaneously, like I remember, I would be walking through my driveway, and I would hear these chants of just like maybe, I don't know if it was necessarily Nam Yongo Rengekyo. I'm getting that inaccurate, but whatever the chant was, it sounded very different. I would look in the window and I would see people sitting in a circle, and the lights would be out and the candle would be on, and like, what is all that? And I'm a 6-year-old. I'm used to only seeing certain types of things. And then my parents would explain, well, they have a different way of believing. And so my parents, being a mixed parents, they were very receptive and supportive of people who are of different walks in life. And so they're just like, this is something that's different from what a lot of other people do. So I was like, oh, okay. So I remember the neighbors being friendly. And so if we talk about like walks or steps towards Buddha nature, I can talk about the first steps I took towards actually meeting a Buddha, or excuse me, a Buddhist. And it was towards meeting my neighbors. I can remember very distinctly walking up to the house door and knocking on the door, and I was asked to like walk the dog, and so I would walk the dog on a regular basis, and eventually the neighbors invited me in and were very friendly and very generous in offering me like cookies and this, that, and the other, and as neighbors normally do. And so we established a very strong relationship for many years whilst they continued to live in the house. And so that's the first time I meet a Buddhist. And so it kind of just wakes me up to like, it's a thing, and it's not just a thing, but it's a legit thing of legit people, nice people, just like everybody else. And so it helps to like strengthen that notion of pluralism and multiculturalism, that there are people who are different, but like you said before, like we're also essentially in the most fundamental ways the same, and it's like there's that commonality and that congruence that's beneficial.
Yeah, man, it's just but bottom line, how are you going to treat somebody that think and pray differently than you?
Yeah.
You gonna greet him with the same, common courtesy.
Yeah.
You should.
Yeah. So, I want to ask one other thing, because I know we've been at this for a while, and I want to be mindful of that. Yeah. But I want to ask one other thing. So getting back to the proclamation that you make of the mantra, how do you get involved? How do you find out about the community, and how do you arrive at that point of going through that rite of passage?
As far as getting involved in Buddhism?
Yeah.
Well, I was waiting for my friend who was a devotee, Hare Krishna devotee.
Okay.
His name was Jason, or they call him, his Krishna name was Jagannath. He worked at the gas station over on what is it? What's that? Off of Taylor, I think, on Lee Road. And he's
Lee Road?
Before you get to Bain Bridge.
Okay.
The street that crosses the gas station, right across from the Jewish that Jewish store.
Okay.
There's and there's a Jewish school right.
Right. Yeah.
next door to it.
Right. I know what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. Well, he worked there.
Okay.
So I was on there's a street, Coventry, Coventry crosses Mayfield. Not before you get to Superior Hill.
Okay.
My friend, I was on her porch, waiting for. Jason lived upstairs and she lived downstairs, so I was waiting for Jason to get off of work.
Okay.
And they were coming down the street. I don't think she knew who I was at that time.
Okay.
And well, not to the extent, that she was familiar with me, but she seen me before. But she asked me, they said, who are you waiting for? Strange guy on the porch. I said, well, I'm waiting for Jason to get off of work. And then through the midst of the conversation, man, they said, well, we're Buddhists. And as soon as they said that, man, spark went on in my head. I said, wow, why is this coming back in my life at this point? I better pay a little more close attention to it.
Okay.
Because there was a friend of mine some years ago was telling me about Buddhism down in Cuyahoga Community College. A young lady by the name of Pat Barry. She was always trying to get me to go to a Buddhist meeting, and I went to a couple of them, but I didn't give it this time and wait, as far as, getting, practicing it, that kind of thing. So that's how I was introduced, from the very start there.
Okay. Cool. And so, and that begins kind of like the attending meetings or attending meditation sessions, or just studies with the community.
Yeah. Well, I started to. At that time, they were located on the west side. I started to go to the Buddhist Center, and which they met every month, first Sunday of the month. And my friend Linda, which I was on the porch waiting for Jason. She would come pick me up, and I would ride with her in the morning, and we would get there before the Buddhist practice, before they start chanting and everything, and before I know it, the years went by, man.
Nice, cool. Well, and I know it provides.
And chanting ever since.
I know it provides balance and guidance in your walk, and there's appreciation for the benefit that your practice provides for you and for others that you positively affect as well. So that's cool. Yeah. I'll share one other thing with you as we get to wrap up. So are you familiar with the Parliament of the World's Religions?
The what now?
The Parliament of the World's Religions.
No, I'm not.
So it's basically like the largest interreligious gathering on earth, where people from all different types of religious communities come together and attend workshops and do sessions of chanting and kirtan and bhajan and all these other things of like just kumbaya, basically. So I've attended a number of these. They've been in different places around the earth. And so the most recent occasion that I attended was about 5 years ago. And by that point, I had seen the scene, and it's actually overwhelming. When you think about like you have a very special, unique kind of spiritual experience or a spiritual walk because you're familiar with all these different traditions and teachings and practices. And so that there's a certain consciousness that's shared with that, and there's a certain scene of people who share that consciousness. But it can be very difficult in a day-to-day kind of basis to interact with these type of people on a regular basis. So it can be like somewhat challenging to kind of like always searching for people who share that kind of proclivity. So that's my life. That's how I am. And so at the Parliament, it's like thousands of people who are at the exact same thing. And so after doing it for days and days and days, or for doing it like a 7-day conference, it's actually overwhelming of like a nice thing. It's like being like a 7-day pass to Cedar Point when you're like 8 years old. It's like at first it's amazing, but then it's like, oh man, I'm tired now. So, anyways, all that being said, at this particular point at the conference in the land of the Utes in Salt Lake City, I was sitting at a talk. The person talking was actually Karen Armstrong, who is a very prominent speaker and leader in the interfaith movement globally. But so a lot of people are impressed. She's one of the keynote speakers. So, but by that point, I was kind of like, I was like in my own kind of thing. I was looking at my phone, and seeing like when I'm going to meet my friends afterwards for dinner and this, that, and the other. And so as I'm looking at my phone, I look up and I just look at everybody like walking up and down the aisles and seated in the chairs. And I just felt like an awesome oneness. And it was like, I kind of felt it before, but at that particular moment, it was just like a connectivity. People refer to it like as a mystic moment or something like that. But it was just like a huge peace and well-being, and like almost, I dare not say invincibility, but just like everything's okay. Everything is like beautiful. And it's in that experience that I find a new resolve for doing certain ethical disciplines that I've been wanting to do for a while, but didn't think it was actually possible to do. And so I basically found five disciplines that I commit to, one of which is veganism, but additional is honesty, sobriety, and appropriate relationship with women, and fair economics. And so that's coming from my studies. That's coming from teachings from fellow practitioners additionally. But some of those things I hadn't like all the way fully done until that point. I was like, yo, I'm going to do it. And since then, I experienced a transformation. I mean, you know me when I was over 400 pounds. After that awakening, like I changed a lot of my behavior, a lot of my habits, a lot of my discipline, and I just feel an increased amount of healthiness. And it's later that I'm informed. I'd known about these principles being shared by the many different traditions of the earth, but I'm able to identify it as the Panchasila, which is the 5 ethics that the Buddha teaches, and it's an ancient thing, but it's also a very contemporary thing, and it's a beneficial, a healthy thing. And so that's one of the other steps that I can say talking. One of the steps taking towards Buddha nature is the adopting of that ethical discipline.
So where do they have this at, Peter?
So it's a different location. The first one, so basically the first parliament was actually over 100 years ago. It was in 1893. In conjunction with the World Exposition, which was like a world fair type of thing back in 1893. It was in conjunction with 400 years of settling, 400 years of settling within the Western Hemisphere. So it was in Chicago, the land of Miami, back in 1893. And so in 1990, well, so it was something started since then, but it kind of waned. So it was a one-off type of thing. But in 1993, some people from the Swami Vivekananda Center in Chicago, because that's where Swami Vivekananda makes a name for himself at the Parliament. So some of the people from the local Swami Vivekananda Center that's established from his legacy go up to some religious leaders, some rabbis, and some additional Christian leaders like, hey, we should do something to commemorate this century, kind of the centennial of the Parliament. So they form this committee, and they form like, let's hold another conference. So they do another parliament, and it's successful. Thousands of people attend. So they're like, yo, let's do this every few years. So at first it was every 5 years. The next one was actually in South Africa, in the land of Xhosa people in Cape Town, South Africa. The one after that was in Barcelona, in Catalan, and then one after that. Actually, I found out, I learned about it during that one. It was very interesting. It was like I was actually in Chicago very briefly before that parliament was actually convened there. Then I was actually in Cape Town the summer, like a month before it was actually convened in South Africa, completely oblivious about it. I found out about it just as it was about to happen in Spain, in Barcelona, and I was unable to attend, but it was online, so I attended online. But I was able to attend the one in Australia, in Melbourne, the land of Warren Jerry, and I attend the one.
That was fortunate for you, man.
Oh, most definitely. And then I become an ambassador, actually, of the Parliament. I become involved in like the workings of it, and I attend the one that I mentioned about having that experience was the one in Utah. That was 5 years ago.
I I used to live in Utah.
Haha, nice. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, Salt Lake City. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
When I first graduated from high school.
Interesting. How'd you get over there?
Up at that University of Utah. My father's mother lived out there. They had a restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah.
It has a certain reputation.
Part of me still out there, man.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting vibe there because it has a certain reputation because of the Latter-day Saint community.
Yeah, the Mormons run everything.
Yeah, but simultaneously, as amidst that reputation, there's a very kind of easygoing West Coast kind of vibe to it as well. And there are a lot of people from a lot of different places that settle there. There's a large, well, I shouldn't say large, but I've met a number of Africans who live there, and there's a large people from a lot of different lands internationally that settle in Utah. So it's interesting, and so it's kind of like the crossroads, and it's kind of like the introduction to the West Coast when one is traveling from the east. So it's an interesting vibe there.
You never lived there. You just traveled through there.
So I went there for the conference. I've actually been there a couple. I've been there a few times, for a number of different reasons. So yeah, there's a restaurant there that's based upon free will offering. I think it's called like the World Cafe or something like that. So it's a nice joint.
Okay.
So yeah, but yo, man.
Peter, let me ask you, have you been recording all this, man?
I got it all. You're like, yo, this better be recorded, Peter. We've been at this for an hour. I'm tired, yo. So the sun done set. So yeah, we got it. We got it. So and I appreciate it, man. So I'll ask you this: can you share one to grow on, one for the next 7 generations to grow on, like a word of wisdom for others?
You asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Respect. Run that past me again now.
A word of wisdom, one to grow on, as we conclude our convo for today.
Well, let me see here. Wow, words of wisdom. Try to keep an attitude of gratitude.
Attitude of gratitude. Amen. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for that.
There's always something to smile about, man, and find something compatible with people that are different from you.
Find the congruence. Find the similarity, the commonality.
Yeah.
Cool.
Find something. So people always appreciate when you can, you know, if I don't care if it's their language or something about them. If you can, find something that they are familiar with, that you are familiar with, and greet them that way. People they kind of open up a little bit more so when you find a common similarity about them.
Okay.
That you are familiar with. Just like through our conversation, we found some similarities right off the bat, man.
Yeah.
But it's always good, man, because you never know, man, who you're talking to, and what path, what type of road the other person's been on.
Yeah.
That might be very similar to your road, and things that you've been, experiencing in your life and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, if we can show by example, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Show by
walking the walk.
Example.
Walking the walk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you, Brother Hashim.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, man.
Are
you gonna mind some of this some kind of way?
All right, so I appreciate that conversation. It requires a little bit of diligence amidst the audio levels. Again, that's just the tech situation at the moment. Without the phone, without the Wi-Fi, without this and the mic and this and the other. But anyways, it is what it is, and I try to make it as level. Actually, this is one occasion where I did edit, and it wasn't a matter of snipping or anything else away. It was a matter of the recording actually stopped early into the convo, and I usually do a backup recording, and the backup I actually only remembered to do it after starting. So anyways, it overlapped the backup recording and the primary recording. So that was the edit early, like at minute 5 or 6 or 8 or 7, something like that. Anyways, again, thanks go to Brother Hashim for the convo. And there are, again, gems that he shares. There are gems within the words, but then there are gems beyond the words, in the walk that is revealed through the words. And so that is something that I glean in listening to the convo again, just even after a week after having it originally. I also am increasingly observant of like my talking patterns. I can be fast, I can be stepping on toes, and additionally, and so I'm mindful of that. Perhaps a little bit or seemingly anxious. It's increasingly energized, and I'm working at different speeds. So that might seem cumbersome, but it is what it is. I am mindful that of like Convo, and two things I'm increasingly aware of. One is that Convo with an agenda that's somewhat cumbersome, or it requires a certain amount of, I don't want to say necessarily maybe skill, but it involves some things, because if I have something in mind that I want to say, then I'm focusing increasingly on that, or unduly on that, rather than actually listening to the person. And usually when I'm having a convo with people, like in person or on the phone or whatever, but just organically, usually it's just a matter of like just flowing and let the convo go. And I might think of something at the moment and then share it accordingly. But it's other than with like a specific agenda within a set moment. So that's comparatively, it takes it for me to do that. It has some it involves something. It requires some concentration, and it actually detracts some concentration from the listening. So anyways, I'm being mindful of that. And as I mentioned before, I'm actually, in terms of these in this podcast and these podcast combos, I'm migrating away from that kind of set agenda, having a topic, maybe having some thoughts or some points to share, but just letting it flow and not worrying about a specific thing. Because to be honest, when I talked about the three steps towards Buddha nature, in my mind I have like episodic specific things, and this is something that's taught to me back in MBA school, managerial psychology 1, Dr. Colin Ingleton, about how when we talk about episodes that we experience, specific episodes, that has a way of providing a significant conveyance of an experience of a principle, and additionally, and so that's what I was focusing on, without necessarily explicitly articulating that, and also not wanting to seem increasingly or unduly formulaic. So I try to kind of like gear towards that, but then that just seems somewhat manipulative, of like, oh well, that's not actually what I was thinking, how about try it again. So that's what I'm thinking in my mind. And then I think of like how do I segue back to this, because then I have the three that I've thought about for myself. So like I said, it gets a little bit too formulaic and this and the other, and that this is no commentary about Brother Hashim. This is about me. It's all about me, and that's where the point is. So all that being said, my intention is to kind of be increasingly like relaxed and freestyle with a topic and maybe have some thoughts, but not necessarily having like a fixated agenda for the conversation. Now that being said, there are occasions when it is appropriate to have a conversation. Like if people are having like a disagreement with each other and want to hash things out, like there are certain points that people want to remember. There are occasions when it's appropriate to have an agenda or to have ideas of what one wants to share. But in terms of like these convos, the intention is for it to be just relaxed. So there. Now that being said, for 5 minutes, the other thing I notice is that it's one thing talking with a person one-to-one or in a group where everybody else is involved. It's another thing when talking with a person with the intention of recording it and thinking of the audience and how the audience is going to receive it, because again, that dilutes the concentration. So when I'm in a conversation with people one-on-one, I'm just in that conversation and I'm listening to the person as it is. I'm worried about entertaining or this, that, and the other. And so I can listen to what the person is saying without feeling an obligation of like clarification of terms or whatever else, just listening and investing within that. However, when I'm recording it for others, then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, are people going to know what this means, or what is that, this and the other? So it's beneficial, it's purposeful, it's what I'm doing this for. It's a podcast, but it's another skill set that I'm increasingly mindful of. So that's just, again, these are my notes that I'm speaking out loud, and that helps to further the mindfulness. So there's that. Like I said, the audio may be somewhat distracting for some. I have to think about what I can do to adjust that, because I know if one turns the volume up to listen to the person on the phone, then my voice gets extremely loud. So I'm working on how to do that. That's much of it. So in terms of the passing the hat joint, I ain't gonna say too much at this moment, because the mechanics of it still have to be set up. And again, even just like the comm situation, COMM, the communication situation in terms of the phone and everything else like that, ain't even in a position to do that. Anyways, what I will say is that we're convening, God willing, a monthly community call on Zoom, and the intention is just to give people an opportunity to talk with each other. People in my circle, in my community, in our circle, in our community, right before the full moon. So the next full moon is next week. It's actually Vesak next week. So that's what we're beginning to do, and this is something that's been like in the works or whatever, but we'll see how that goes. So if anything, that's what I advocate for the moment. That's the promo that I have, or whatever. Big up to Scandinavian hip hop. So other than that, I mean, the projects continue going. There's actually progress being made in a number of those fronts, and so we'll keep this under 10 minutes. My little outro joint. I will say again, our destination is heaven, our origination is heaven, our path is our decision. Patience helps us in the deliberation to find solution. We cultivate patience through stillness, quiet, and honesty. And that being said, Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Mir, Zaijen, Adios, Te Chagris, Esepena Asamudro, Kele Ofred. One love and peace, happiness and liberation.